The National Renewable Energy Laboratory. About half of the bioenergy staff is out there by choice. Yes.
We are going to start in next 5 minutes.
There's another speaker. There's another speaker.
That's when you signed up.
Hello. Yes, yes. Wow. Nice to meet you.
How many years?
You're?
I was with the biotechnology.
Oh, absolutely. Nice to meet you after many, many years. Yeah. Maybe 20 years. We're meeting after 20 years. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm Harsha from
Please come.
working with Central.
So if biofuels is impossible. I think that's
Walk around and serve.
Yeah.
I want to say come. You just sit here.
Yeah.
Here. You can sit here. A little bit tight. Yeah.
I'll go down. Just 2 minutes. I'll go down.
Please sit down. Please sit down.
Hello, sir. How are you? Fine, sir.
Mr. Dayanand, you can sit there. Senthil, can we start? Good afternoon, everyone who's joined us here for this EU-India and International Innovation Cooperation in the Biofuels Sector G2G and B2G meeting on advanced biofuels. Good morning to all of you who are joining us from Europe today as well. So we have a very interesting mix of international speakers today. I wouldn't really say that they are only just speakers, but each one is a major actor, stakeholder in looking at trying to find ways to scale the deployment of biofuels. So just to give you a brief introduction, while I welcome you, this project by the EU delegation in India was launched in September 22, really to look at how can we build a roadmap for collaboration between EU and India in the advanced biofuel sector. We started in October, November with a mapping exercise, really mapping who are the major European and Indian stakeholders. And in the process, we also had a chance to meet with the US government as well as the Brazilian embassy, as we realized that biofuels and advanced biofuels is increasingly going to become a global interplay, because we would need the production and supply of biofuels all around the world for this to really become a reality for every airline, every ship, every car that comes onto the road. So with that in mind, actually, while we were doing this mapping of the research organizations, biofuel producers, oil companies, also the feedstock suppliers, whether you're a farmer or a city that's generating waste, many opportunities and challenges really we found across the supply chain. So we are meeting here today, actually, literally 3 or 4 months later, as we started this mapping exercise, to organize this awareness, to bring all the people around one table, or in a small, tight, cute little room like this as we have today, and really to create a platform for all of us who are talking about the same thing, but maybe from different directions and from different countries. So we want to be able to create more meetings, more interactions, to really then create a platform for business to act, and for our communities to experience more biofuels. So whatever we interact today will go into creating a roadmap. All of you will be privy to that information very soon. And with that in mind, I just want to kickstart today's discussions and really thank a lot the Karnataka government, the Karnataka Renewable Energy Development Agency, represented by Mr. KP Rudrapaya, who is here today, to coordinate this, to host us, as the Karnataka government, and also the Department of Biotechnology, Dr. Sangeeta Kasture. Thank you for joining hands with us as we try to build this dialogue. I'd just like to hand over to Mr. Rudrapaya to share his welcome remarks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Leena, for that wonderful introduction. Myself, Rudrapaya, I'm heading Karnataka Renewable Energy Development Limited, Bengaluru. In fact, I had the renewable energy vertical in the state of Karnataka. There is a separate biofuel development board which looks after biofuel sector. But from the government of Karnataka, I welcome you to Bengaluru, which is the Silicon Valley of India, and also for this European Union, India and International Innovation Cooperation in the biofuel sector, G2G and B2G meeting on advanced biofuels. Just to brief on the renewable energy sector, you may be aware that the India is ranks, third in the globally as far as the total installed capacity is concerned. And if you take Karnataka, Karnataka stands number 3 in the country with an installed capacity of 16 gigawatt in renewable energy sector. The total installed capacity is 30 gigawatt. More than 50% is coming from renewable energy in Karnataka itself. Of course, we are the leaders in renewable energy, and we also have innovative projects like green hydrogen, hybrid projects in renewable energy, and so on. So, with this small introduction, so I will hand over the mic to Mr. Pirek to take it further. Thank you so much.
You can move the camera. Yes. Yes, dear colleagues, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. It's probably Indian innovation today because we are in an environment I did not anticipate. But the most important is that we are together. I remember Colonel Monish, Mr. Ramakrishna from last meetings, and a new face. So I will be very happy also to tell you that this evening we have a reception at the Sheraton Hotel, World Trade Center. And I hope it will be less noisy than here. But let's try to still, we have colleagues online from Brussels, in fact. Maybe we are going to move with a presentation yet from now from my colleague Maria Georgiadou. She's based at headquarters. She's the colleague in charge of especially financing mission innovation. But not only, she's looking at the biofuel sector. as head of sector for this area. So Maria, if you can hear me, please be ready to present yourself.
Yes, good afternoon or good evening to all of you. I am working in the European Commission in the Directorate General for Research and Innovation many years now, and I am the responsible for the research and innovation strategy in advanced biofuels and other renewable fuels. And from this position, I actually advise the framework programs for research and innovation on the orientation and the financing of research and innovation in advanced biofuels. I'm a senior expert since several years in this area, and I also, as Pierrick said, I take care of the contribution of the EU in the mission innovation, mission integrated biorefineries, which is going to be also presented to you later. But now I will try to share my screen, and I will present you the elements of Horizon Europe. I hope you see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Maria, I can see.
Okay, so I will show you a little bit some introductory slides, and then I will talk in particular for the topics on advanced biofuels, which are available for this period. Horizon Europe, as many of you know, is the framework program for research and innovation until 27. It runs from 21 and has 95.5 billion euro for all the areas that it supports. It has, there are 3 parts of Horizon Europe, and in the specific program that implements the Horizon Europe and the European Innovation and Technology, there are 3 pillars. One on science, one on challenges, and one on innovation. We are actually working under pillar 2 on challenges and industrial competitiveness of Europe, and we are working under cluster 5, which is the climate, energy, and mobility. The policy objectives for 23-24 work program under Horizon Europe is, first of all, the European Green Deal. We try to support the achievement of the European Green Deal objectives, which you may know that it is the 50% less greenhouse gas emissions in 2030 and climate neutrality in 2050. Also, lately, there is the Repower EU, which is another joint plan in the EU to have energy security and energy autonomy and reduce imports from fossil fuels or fossil fuels from outside the EU. Other objectives are the development of an economy that works for people, so industrial competitiveness and skills. And then the digital age, Europe fit for the digital age, to have a lot of topics that foster the IT part, the position of Europe in the world. That's why we have the mission innovation, as well as the EU-Africa cooperation and the European democracy. Having a look at the cluster 5, you can see that there are several areas, as I said, energy, climate, and mobility. The one on energy supply actually is the one of interest. And this cluster has 15.1 billion for the period. It is implemented through the work program of cluster 5 that includes some types of partnerships, which are the co-funded and co-programmed. It is implemented through institutional partnerships. These are totally independent associations, let's say partnerships like the clean hydrogen with their own budget, and through the missions. The European missions, not mission innovation, which are part also of this work program. Now, under climate, energy and mobility cluster and in the destination sustainable, secure and competitive energy supply, What we expect to achieve is to have more efficient, clean, sustainable, secure, and competitive energy supply that will be done through the more performant renewable energy solutions and, of course, smart grids. And under this global area of energy supply, we have the area of global leadership in affordable, secure, and sustainable renewable energy technologies and services, in order to have more competitive value chains, more competitive position of those in growth markets, and also diversify renewable services and technology portfolio. And now we pass on the topics that are relevant under this area of global leadership in renewable energy in the sector renewable fuels. And here I present to you overall. We have for 23-24 work program topics that are for renewable fuels, and these cover advanced biofuels. They cover synthetic renewable fuels. They cover microalgae and direct solar fuels, and they cover intermediate bioenergy carriers. Topics under bioenergy for CHP and fixation of carbon for biogenic flue gases. Topics on renewable gases under the energy systems, grids, and storage. International topics, which is actually the one I'm going to present on integrated energy-driven biorefineries, but also there are topics for Africa. And we have several cross-cutting topics, like one on renewable energy valleys, like on emerging renewable energy technologies and the market attacks, and we have other actions. This is the general overview of the 23-24 program in the area. And these are all based, as I said, on the European Green Deal, achieving the objectives, and the Repower EU. And now, if we go individually to the topics, I will present a few of them, the three that they have been identified actually from this conference as the ones that are more interested to India. There are many other topics. All topics are open to collaboration with third countries, but they do not secure EU contribution to the third country participants. This has to be found by the authorities of the country that the participant comes from. The first topic, it is the Horizon CL523 D30106, and this is entitled Demonstration of Advanced Biofuel Technologies for Aviation and or Shipping. And as the title already indicates, in this topic, we would like to demonstrate technological pathways for the production of liquid, jet, drop-in, and or liquid bunker drop-in advanced biofuels. So the topic could be focused either on the jet drop-in liquid or on the bunker drop-in liquid fuel, or both, but not necessarily. The origin of these fuels, the feedstock, should be biogenic residues and waste, including also CO2 as a waste, or microalgae with the cyanobacteria also included. The technologies that are covered are basically chemical, biochemical, biological, and thermochemical. You can have either the technology, individual technology, or combinations in case of different concepts. What we expect is to have the pathways to produce the fuel at a reduced cost. The cost should be at least at parity with existing biofuels for use in aviation or in shipping, for example, the HEFA for aviation and the biodiesel for shipping. Now, because this demonstration would aim at commercialization of the technology, we should receive information and assessment about the economic feasibility and the potential of scaling up at commercial scale. So the exploitation plans that will be in the proposal should include preliminary feasibility studies and business plan, and they should indicate also possible funding resources In EU, we have several instruments like the Invest EU, like the Innovation Fund, others, but they should indicate how this business plan is going to be materialized later on. Of course, we expect the sustainability through the greenhouse gas reduction above the state of the art if we compare it to fossil equivalents, and this should be assessed on a life cycle basis. We expect, actually, what I already said, to have ready to pre-commercial plant investments, to have a variety of portfolio for such first-of-a-kind plants for aviation and shipping. And the technology should be de-risked, boosted in a higher scale, and contributing to the market uptake of the fuel. And so this will reply to the need of these fuels in aviation and shipping, and in the better integration of these technologies in aviation and shipping. And now the details of this. The details is that this is an innovation action. We expect to have TRL technology readiness level 6 or 7 by the end of the project. We have a total budget of 18 million for the topic, and the project 9 million. The call is already open and will close on end of March of 2023. And here there is an ex-eligibility condition on the Earth observation systems. If they are used in the project, they should make use of the European ones, the Copernico and Galileo. And if on top of them, they can use other as well. Now, we pass to the second topic, which is the Horizon CL5 2023 D30207. This is entitled The Development of Next Generation Advanced Biofuel Technologies. And as already is indicated in the title, this concerns mostly the development of next generation technologies for the production of novel and advanced liquid and gaseous here, both liquid and gaseous biofuels advanced. And the feedstock should be, again, biogenic residue waste, including the CO2, the organic part of wastewater, or microalgae and cyanobacteria. Technologies here could be chemical, electrochemical, biochemical, biological, thermochemical pathways, or combination of them. We aim here to high conversion efficiency, not just to make the fuel, but resources is important, and to have low to near zero carbon emissions from overall production. This means actually that innovative ways have to be proposed, either to reuse biogenic flue gases, or to reuse and recycle in the process to capture most of the CO2 and the greenhouse gas emissions and arrive to low or near zero carbon emissions during the production. Again, the sustainability, the competitiveness, the minimization of greenhouse emissions should be also the focus, with synergies with renewable hydrogen and other renewable energy technologies that are needed for processing energy. This means that the energy that it needs to be as an input in the process should come from a renewable source. And what we aim here is the interface with this technology, not just to say that this will be renewable. And the same for hydrogen. When hydrogen is needed in the process, should be renewable, and the interface with that hydrogen, which is renewable, should be foreseen in the proposal. Also, this topic looks at uses in fuel cells for all transport modes in order to use the biofuel as a renewable energy carrier now, and not as a fuel. That will have also high conversion efficiency and low pollution in the fuel cell. And again, sustainability and greenhouse gas emissions should be assessed by an LCA, and also the proposals here should foresee ways along the value chain how to reduce these emissions to and below net zero. We expect to have disruptive and emerging advanced biofuel technologies available to increase the availability of such technologies, to accelerate the readiness of cost-effective and highly performing technologies of advanced biofuels in the future and for all economic sectors, and to reinforce, of course, the European scientific basis and the technology export potential for these advanced biofuel technologies. This is a research and innovation action, which is expecting to have technical readiness level 4 or 5 by the end of the project. We have 12 million for this topic, and we expect to contribute by 4 million euro per project. This call will open in May, 4th May 2023, and will close on 5th of September 2023. And again, the same condition for Galileo's in case of satellite-based Earth observation data positioning are needed. And as I say, these two topics are not particularly focusing on the third countries and international cooperation. They are focusing in the technologies. Now we have a topic which is particularly designed for international cooperation, and this is the Horizon CL5 2024 D303, entitled Development of Smart Concepts of Integrated Energy-Driven Biorefineries for Co-Production of Advanced Biofuels, Biochemicals, and Biomaterials. Now, this topic aims to develop zero waste and neutral or negative carbon emission energy efficient biorefinery concepts, which will produce low cost advanced biofuels with co-production of other added value bio-based products and bioenergy. So the focus here is the low-cost advanced biofuels aided for the cost by these other bio-based products and bioenergy co-produced in the same biorefinery. The pathways foreseen are chemical, biochemical, electrochemical, biological, thermochemical, or combinations. Feedstocks that are eligible are biogenic waste and residues, algae, and aquatic biomass. And the focus here is on circular processes. It is also on the integration of mass and energy flows. So the balances, the mass and energy balances should close and should address the process heats and the power needs by using also the co-produced bioheat and biopower also integrated into the process, capturing and reusing also biogenic effluent gases and sequestering biogenic emissions. This means that, yes?
Sorry, hi, Dr. Maria, may I request that you wrap up because we just, in the interest of time, we need to move to the next speaker.
2 minutes more.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, and here we have the ask for the assessment of the feedstock cost supply at regional and local level, and improvement of feedstock mobilization, included through digitalization. We look at the socioeconomic and environmental sustainability on a life cycle analysis basis, and the assessment of economic feasibility again, because this is one of the topics that needs to be scaled up, and we want to assess the potential of scaling up at commercial scale. And again, the cost should be aimed to be at parity with marketed biofuel equivalents, or when there are no such, they should be to fossil fuel equivalents. And the technology should be validated in a relevant environment. And here we need to cooperate with mission innovation countries. We expect, actually, this is not an obligation, but is an expectation to cooperate with such countries, in particular those that are in the mission integrated biorefineries. So the outcome will be to expect a portfolio of these concepts to contribute to the mission innovation to mission of integrated biorefineries and optimize the overall concept. It is a research and innovation action with a TRL 5 by the end of the project. So the technology and the demonstration should be at pilot, let's say, scale. The total budget is 7 million, and we have 3.5 million per project. The call will open in 2024. on the 7th of May and will close 5 months later on the 5th of September 2024. Here are some useful links that you could use to understand and see more in detail these topics. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Maria, for sharing this detailed overview of the Horizon Europe calls and the opportunities for co-funding. I'd just like to invite Dr. Sangeeta M. Kasture, Scientist, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, to share about mission innovation plans on global collaboration. Dr. Kasture.
Thank you. Hope I am audible. So good afternoon to everyone, and thanks EU and the CREDA organizers from the Karnataka Renewable Energy Board. I am coming from the Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, where India is also participating, founding and active member of Mission Innovation, which is the multilateral platform. We'll move to next slide, please. So Department of Biotechnology has the has been supporting national program on bioenergy. So promoting innovation R&D besides life science and other programs in the life sciences, the energy bioscience program is the key energy program of this department, where the thematic areas are mostly we are supporting the advanced biofuels in renewable energy. Next slide, please. So 2G ethanol has been focused. Besides that, earlier slide, please. Earlier slide, please. So 2G ethanol, then algal biofuel, biomass to methanol, and recently aviation fuel also we are supported. So those are being supported, and the instruments, various instruments are there, Center of Excellence, competitive grant schemes, and their international cooperation and capacity building is the major thrust of this. So we have supported more than 1,000 fellows, PhD students, as well as the MSc students who are working on interdisciplinary areas in clean energy projects. Then BIRAC is the Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, which supports R&D at the industries as well as innovations by individuals as well as startups. So this program is more than 50 innovators have been supported under this program. The thrust is on sustainability of biomass and how biomass can be further developed. For example, how sorghum can be developed, high biomass sorghum, and lignin, reduced lignin, etc., as well as microalgae. Through high-tech modern biotechnological tools, we are developing this program. Biomass breakdown, as we know that this is a critical, so enzyme development has also been taken in big way. And further, how to improve these convergent technologies using systems and synthetic biology as well as chemical engineering aspects. So those are being looked at. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the Mission Innovation is the global platform which is catalyzing a decade of action and investment in research, development, demonstration. So India is one of the members, and this program is towards which was launched during its Paris Agreement, and which goals and has the pathway to net zero. And India is founding member, where our in presence of Prime Minister, this was announced in 2015. Next slide. So because Mission Innovation Secretariat Head Eleanor could not make it, so I'll just give background about the Mission Innovation on her behalf. So 23 countries are participating in this, and on behalf of European Union, European Commission is partnered in that. Besides that, there are other partners, IE Arena, World Bank and World Economic Forum, and etc. These are the major partners. So there are these objective of this Mission Innovation is to get, besides investing, increasing the investment, they're also looking at, next slide please, the large missions which are catalyzing the decade of action and investment in R&D to make the clean energy affordable and accessible. So there are several missions are there. I'm not going to detail, but next slide please. So these are 7 missions which are listed here. Next slide. So 7 missions are the zero emission shipping, green powered future, clean hydrogen, carbon dioxide removal, urban transition, integrated biorefineries, and net zero industries. So this collaboration, and basically we are trying to engage the industries in this in order to accelerate innovation and how we can connect the dots in order to include the entire value chain. Next slide, please. And beside these various missions, there are 3 different platforms. This is Insight, Collaborate, and Accelerate. The Insight platform is basically to track the innovation progress happening in these areas. And Collaborate is to connect the R&D and the research platform where we can share the knowledge. So all researchers from various member countries, they can connect to each other. And the Accelerate, which is led by India, again, this is a clean energy incubator where we are promoting startup ecosystems, and we are trying to connect the incubators across the member countries to scale the innovations with startups. Next slide. Coming to the India is leading these 2 platforms. One is integrated biorefinery missions as well as the sustainable aviation fuels. Integrated biorefinery mission, which was initiated with partnership with Netherlands, where, as Maria has mentioned, these objective is to have the develop and demonstrate the integrated biorefineries with co-production of materials and chemicals in order to make this more sustainable. India is also participating in other missions, clean hydrogen, smart grid, and zero emission shipping, etc. And the sustainable aviation fuel, which is co-led, this is a collaborate platform, which is again co-led by India and US. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So where India has also taken lead and we have supported, we are trying to look at how we can widen the feedstock base. So basically how to explore the various feedstock and how to improve the low carbon pathways for sustainable aviation. This is just to present the scenario which is presented by Nova Institute, where we can look at this global carbon demand for chemicals and derived materials. You can see that at 2020, there is demand for 450 million metric tons carbon, whereas if you look at the 2050, 1,000 metric tons carbon is demand. And this can be made by reducing the fossil-based fuels 84% stock with 20% bio-based and 20% by CO2-based and 50% by recycling. So looking at this scenario by 2050, we are looking at how we can replace the 10% additional, next slide, additional 10% bio-based refineries in order to produce these fuels, chemicals, and materials which can replace the fossil-based fuels. So this is a typical biorefinery when we look at sustainable biomass can convert with value addition can efficiently we can perform and convert into oils, fibers, basically food, feed, and chemicals and materials, and fuels would be the major crux of that, and these would be the co-products. Maybe in future we would have to look at the scenario where chemicals, materials would be the focus and where the fuels would be the byproducts. So next slide, please. As again, this was launched during last annual gathering where Honorable Minister India had launched this mission, and we are looking at all these member countries are looking at how to develop the innovation pathway, and we can do implementation work plan, and this has been discussed based on the R&D research and development. Further, each country will have demonstrated technologies, and we could attract industries to invest in this. So innovative solutions would be coming out in this, and to accelerate that, we need to have more investment coming into this. Next slide, please. So there are 3 pillars under this mission. First is the research and development, where we are looking at new product development, how to improve the efficiency of these processes. And we are also like to further based on the learning of this, but showcase these by the demonstrating these projects, and also enabling environment by developing standards, regulations, and doing the LCA and carbon accounting, which can further feed on the report development on that. Next slide, please. So actions, I'm not going to detail on this, but we are working, all the member countries are working on what are the actions on this. And next ministerial meeting, we are focusing on this, how all this collaborative effort could lead to accelerated innovations. Next slide. So these are the mostly organized ongoing activities and next steps. So where synergy with same initiative, that is BioFuture platform we are looking at, where we look forward to have feedback coming, where are the gaps in terms of innovations and R&D. And then second is India-EU cooperation, where just now Maria has talked about the development of smart concept, India-EU collaboration in this smart integrated biorefineries, where this would be launched next year, and would look forward to have great collaboration, where India's basically focus would be on agriculture, residues, and microalgae based platforms. Next slide. So this is the last slide where the mission goals we are looking at improving the support R&D for biorefining technologies, and how we can support the new uses of biomass feedstock to improve crop processing and energy efficiency, as I mentioned, and standards. And lastly, but which is very important, that life cycle analysis, where we would be looking at the sustainability aspects as well as carbon footprints. With this, I would thank all of you. And if there are any further questions, we'd look forward to working together with synergic with all other international platforms. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kasturi. This was really very interesting to see, how India is really, leading a number of the global interactions and, the connect with the EU calls as well. Thank you so much for that. I'd now like to invite Ms. Laura Lonza, Policy Officer, DG Klima of the European Commission, to talk about the EU policies, regulations, and the fiscal incentives. Ms. Laura Lonza, please.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon to all, and thank you for having me here. I will share the screen, and you let me know, please, if you can see the presentation properly. Ideally, if I put it in presentation mode, it should be a bit better. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, that's grand. So I'll start. I'll use the next few minutes to walk quickly with you through the regulatory measures and mechanisms that are in place in the European Union to support advanced biofuels. They belong to the EU Green Deal and Fit for 55 package of measures. As you know, the EU Green Deal has been adopted by the European Union in 2019. At the beginning of this commission, it underlines and reinforces the role as world leader of the EU in the fight against climate change and in achieving emission reduction targets. The EU has decided to become carbon neutral by 2050, and this target is legally binding. It's enshrined in the European climate law adopted on June 30th, 2021, as well as in the Paris Agreement, of course. In the road towards carbon neutrality by 2050, the EU has increased its 2030 net emission reduction target to minus 55% over 1990. And this target is implemented through the Fit for 55 package of proposed legislation. So just to give you a visual of where we are and where we intend to be, this graph gives you an idea, and it is fairly clear that all economic sectors are expected to contribute both to the intermediate 2030 target as well as to the net zero target. As I indicated, the emissions reductions are expected to be delivered through a package of measures that are called Fit for 55 to align with the agreed objective to reduce emissions by 55% over 1990 by 2030. Most of the regulatory initiatives in the Fit for 55 package are geared to achieve energy transition, and advanced biofuels have specific role to play in there. Now, just to give an idea, this is some of the measures I will spend a few words on, and there could be much more to say, but given time limitation, it will be really a bird's eye view of the different initiatives. And then I'm very happy to continue exchanges either directly with DG Klima or through our colleague Pierrick in the delegation. So here we go. So first we have the Fuel EU Maritime Regulation, which is still in co-decision. So it's been negotiated by the co-legislators. It's been adopted by the Commission in July 2021 and is now in discussion with the other institutions. Now, this initiative is fuel agnostic or technology agnostic, meaning that what is requested is to reduce the greenhouse gas intensity of the energy used on board compared to 2020, and there's a timeline towards 2050 with 5-year intermediate targets settled. Now, these are settled by the Commission and still under discussion for the time being. From the numbers that you see on the screen, it is reasonable to expect that and it's actually the purpose of the FuelEU Maritime Regulation proposal to foster demand for alternative fuels in the shipping sector. Now, in the shipping sector, and you'll hear me repeat that over and over for the rest of the presentation, that eligible fuels, including biofuels, has to be compliant with the Renewable Energy Directive when it comes to sustainability, including minimum emission reduction targets. Moving on to the RefuelEU aviation regulation, so another hard-to-abate sector, long-haul transport, that is being addressed through the Fit for 55, so through a dedicated measure in the Fit for 55 package, is looking at aviation and how to induce or accelerate the energy transition from fossil jet fuel to SAFs towards 2050. Now, this is a different design compared to the FuelEU Maritime, meaning that there is specific targets for uptake of sustainable aviation fuels as percentages of the fuel mix towards 2050. Again, every 5 years, there's an increased stringency there, and there's a dedicated sub-mandates on e-fuels as well. Now, this is an obligation on fuel suppliers, really, distributing fuels at EU airports, and there's an obligation for all air operators, so it doesn't matter if it's a flag carrier from the EU, from one of the EU member states, it's really all air operators serving, flying from EU airports. So, next piece of regulation that is fairly important, fairly articulated and relevant as well for the decarbonization and uptake of alternative fuels, including advanced biofuels, is the revision of the EU Emission Trading System Directive. There's updates being proposed and increased stringency, both on the side of the overall ambition, at the same time, also when it comes to the phasing out of free allowances of ETS. The maritime sector has been included for the first time in the EU emission trading system, and the ETS aviation is being updated, again, making it more stringent than it was, than it currently is, with a gradual phase out of free allocation and a steeper linear reduction factor year on year. Now, because we're talking shipping and maritime, it would be nice that my slides moved, but yeah, okay. Sorry, this is one too far. Yeah, so we're looking, of course, very carefully, and actually I'm working in the international domain. So looking in particular at developments at ICAO for international aviation, and at the interplay between ETS for aviation and ICAO CORSIA, and see how the same or aligned incentives can be given to a homogeneous set of feedstock and fuel alternatives, both at the EU side, on the EU side, and internationally. same thing. We're looking very carefully and we're contributing actively to developments occurring at the IMO, at the International Maritime Organization, in particular with respect to the adoption of an LCA technical guidelines by MEPC 80 in July this year to ensure that the strategic choices that are made for international shipping do take into account how the different fuels are produced and how sustainable they are to ensure, well, actually to avoid induced and undesired effects from the energy transition in the sector. So there's action on the EU side. There's a very careful scrutiny and active participation in international developments at ICAO and IMO. Now, in the context of the revision of EU ETS for aviation, there's a specific measure that's been included following the proposal by the Commission. So in the interplay, in the so-called trilogue, in the interplay with the other institutions, the Council and the European Parliament, to give direct support to SAFs, and that's to help bridge the price differential between fossil jet fuel and SAFs. That's one of the main barriers really to upscaling production and market uptake of SAFs. So as you see, 20 million ETS. First of all, it's worth recalling that SAFs that are compliant with the Renewable Energy Directive sustainability architecture are zero rated under the ETS, so they count as zero. Now, we're trading CO2 by the ton, so the emission units are at roughly 90 euros per ton. Now, with 3.6 carbon content in a ton of CO2, that gives you a bit more than 250 euros per ton advantage if you're using SAF, if you're swapping SAF against the fossil jet fuel. On top of that, in the EU ETS revision, in the part relevant for aviation, 20 million ETS allowances have been reserved to cover some or all of the price gap between fossil jet fuel and SAF to accelerate deployment. Now, this is progressive support, 100% support to certain types of fuels like e-fuels that are less mature, less support for more mature pathways such as HEFA.
Laura, may I request you to wrap up in the interest of time? Thank you.
Sure. The allowances are going to be distributed on a first come first served basis up to 2030. So you've heard me mentioning again, if I manage, you heard me mentioning a couple of times the Renewable Energy Directive. Now, this is the legal framework for the development of renewable energy across all sectors of the EU economy, and the rate sets the renewable energy targets across different economic sectors. With respect to transport, the current revision is going in the direction of reducing the greenhouse gas intensity of transport fuels across all modes by 13% by 2030, compared to the new emission-based benchmark covering all transport modes. And there's a specific dedicated sub-target of 2.2% for advanced biofuels. Eligibility of advanced biofuels is really linked to the sustainability criteria and sustainability architecture of the RED. There's minimum emission reduction thresholds compared to the baseline, depending on when the production plant enters operation. It doesn't matter where the plant is located; it can be anywhere around the world. If the fuel batches traded want to be counted towards the red target, they have to comply with this minimum emission reduction thresholds, as well as a number of other considerations coming towards sustainability. Now, I'm not going to enter into the details of this slide. You see there what are the main differences between the current RED that is in place, that was adopted in 2018, and the proposal for revision, which is currently in discussion. Now, advanced biofuels in the context of the RED means biofuels that are produced from the feedstocks listed in Part A of Annex 9 of the RED. So it's a positive list. It's not an open list. And as you see, you have a multiplier in hard-to-abate sectors, namely maritime and aviation, which is limited to advanced biofuels and RFNBOs, renewable fuels of non-biological origin, which include e-fuels, really. So as a bird's eye view, I will conclude here. I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. So very interesting to hear from the EU and India side, and now would want to invite two other countries, starting with Brazil. Yeah, Mr. Renato Godino. Mr. Renato Godino. Oh, great to see you. And he's an energy expert from the Embassy of Brazil. We'd love to hear from you on the bilateral cooperation with India and projects in the biofuel sector. Is this okay?
Hello. Good afternoon to all. Yes, I thank you so much to the organizers. I'm honored to be here in this event on the EU-India new programs and cooperation in biofuels and bioenergy. So I'm very happy to see those developments, very rich developments that we are knowing about today. Sangeeta's presentation was very good, full of new initiatives. I'm getting away from the other microphone so we don't get funny noises. So I'm also here to present a bit on the already, we can say, long-standing partnership between Brazil and India on biofuels as well. So this partnership goes already a few years back and runs through a number of initiatives, places and fora. As some of you may know, Brazil is one of the leading biofuel producers in the world. And in terms of share of utilization of biofuels in the transport sector, Brazil is the leading country in the world. So for gasoline fuels alone, ethanol in Brazil replaces close to half of all the gasoline in Brazil. So not many countries and persons know about this development. Yeah, it's okay. So this has been achieved through an experience of more than 30 years in development of this biofuels program with many phases and setbacks and advances. Now Brazil currently blends 27.5% of ethanol in gasoline, and we were extremely happy to see Prime Minister Modi this morning announcing the launch of E20 in India. So this, we could say, surprising development in India that who went so fast in these and moving from less than 5% to passing the target of 10% in advance of the deadline, advancing the deadline for E20 nationally, and now launching the first G20 pipelines. This has been, for us in Brazil, amazing. So our country, all the biofuels people involved in this, they are all following these successes in India and applauding them very much. So it's very admirable. And I would like to say that this partnership has helped to achieve these results. So it is not a one-off partnership. We can see here the some of the overview of the main initiatives that have taken place since 2016 with the launch of the BioFuture platform. We have the chair of the BioFuture platform here with us, who will speak after me, so I don't need to deal into the details. So in the BioFuture platform and bilaterally, there were many visits from here to there, participations in congresses, events, the holding of, in 2020, the ethanol talks in New Delhi, which was a landmark event, for the two countries were able to spend 3 days delving into the nitty-gritty of building an ethanol program and the roadblocks that Brazil found in their time. And in 2020 also, it was the landmark signing of the Brazil-India MOU during the head of state visit from President in Brazil to India in 2020. So this partnership continues. There have been, during the pandemic, lots of online conversations and meetings, a symposium on aviation, the meetings of the working group created by this memorandum of understanding, visits from ISMA and SIAM to Brazil and from Brazil on. So these developments have been so intense that this slide that I'm showing is already outdated. So since the events highlighted there, there have been more developments. There has been a huge participation from Brazil in the automotive roadshow here in India just a few months ago. So not even that. So in January, and more is to go. So please, next slide. So this is just an overview for you of the results of the joint statement that was put forward between MP&G, Minister Puri, and the then Minister of Mines and Energy in Brazil, moving forward the partnership that was signed during the presidential visit as well. Please, next slide. This plays in the next step of the relationship. So Brazil is confident about its own biofuels program, knows the results and the advantages in terms of job creation, energy security, rural development, and of course, mitigation of climate and CO2 emissions. And we are sure that India is the same. So the two countries now are developing a strong willingness to help other countries to achieve these same results. So a seed of that was included during that statement that I told you about the ministerial visit in 2021, which we are now seeing that seed, that little seed planted in the communique on working on developing cooperation, not only between Brazil and India, but between Brazil and India for the world, for the third countries, for other countries as well. And this has now germinated in the proposals that we are considering and were launched yesterday during the G20 Energy Transition Working Group meeting. I was there, with India proposing a global alliance on biofuels, which in our view, there are still aspects to develop, and we have to see how it can coordinate and avoid duplication of work with multilateral initiatives such as the BioFuture platform. But we are confident in our view that it can work on the specifics of things like these national ethanol programs, that the BioFuture platform, taking a more top-down perspective, strategic view on the biomass issues, will not do. So they will not do on the specifics, the technicalities, the nitty-gritty, and the many roadblocks in achieving a successful program in terms of vehicles, production, utilization, distribution. There are many aspects to consider. So we are confident that this alliance can fill that gap. And the same way as Brazil has been for decades, helping other countries bilaterally, Brazil, India, and other partners can do it in a much more strong way via this alliance that is now being formed. Next slide. So these are some of the next steps that have already, some of them have already taken place in 2022. The implementation of Brazil-India Center of Excellence in ethanol virtually, with the support of the ethanol producing companies in both countries. The ministerial in Bali in Indonesia that is now crossing over to the G20 presidency in India with more and more ambitious actions and proposals on biofuels generally. And we imagine this will take an even stronger personality in next year when Brazil will have the presidency of the G20. So we have this unique opportunity of Indonesia, India, and Brazil successfully holding the G20 presidencies and would be able to call attention to an underdeveloped solution in the portfolio of climate change solutions, which is bioenergy. So it is the overlooked giant of renewables, as the IEA executive director likes to say. And there has been not nearly enough attention as is being dedicated to other also important solutions. But without biofuels, there is no way that we can reach the climate goals and decarbonize the sector. Next slide. So I don't think I need to deal in these details. I think you all know it, the remaining gaps. So I will stop here and pause for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Renato. Again, in the interest of time, we'll take questions at the end, if you don't mind. And I just want to invite Jim Spade from the U.S. Department of Energy to share about U.S.-India bilateral collaborations. Jim.
Thank you very much. So I think rather than talking about the government, I will talk about some U.S. and India private sector collaborations that have been very successful. Higher. Okay. So I'll start with one, a company that many of you probably know that is based out of the United States called LanzaTech. And they've done a number of pilots around the world, but they've had a couple of successful pilots in India with India from waste gases. It's a company and a partnership that we're very excited about. I know India's very excited about. And they're currently, those partnerships were taking waste gases and producing ethanol. Now LanzaJet, and with their partner company LanzaTech, is taking that technology to the next step in a demonstration plant in the United States. They will be taking that ethanol to SAF, and that construction is in robust work right now. It's ongoing, and they hope to be online in the next year and a half or so. Another good example of cooperation in the private sector is between Reliance Industries and the Pacific Northwest Laboratory in the area of algae and hydrothermal liquefaction of algae to produce fuels. They did a very successful pilot plant at Reliance's largest refinery here in India a couple of years ago. And the work of that technology is still having benefits going forward. The research is ongoing, and a number of companies are trying to commercialize that technology as we speak. Another area of cooperation that is evolving is with a very well-known company here to you all, Praj. Here is building 2G ethanol plants, and they're also reaching out and forming partnerships with companies in the United States. Beyond that, we are involved in bilateral cooperation on the government side under something called the Strategic Clean Energy Dialogue. And there, it's a government-to-government relation at the highest levels, but it's going to be, the foundation of it is really going to be industry-to-industry collaboration. That has been under development for a couple of years now, and we're hoping to use this event and the rest of this year to really kick that into higher gear with more specific actions and activities that we undertake together. I'll also just reflect that the US, India, Brazil, and the European Union have been involved in many, many different, very successful international collaborations. Renato was just talking about one, the BioFuture Initiative. The IEA Bioenergy Technology Collaboration Program has been ongoing for about 40 years. India joined just a few years ago, and we're so glad to have them on board. But that is one of the most, I think, impactful technology-oriented organizations in the bioenergy space in the world. So from our point of view, from my point of view, we are looking to optimize all of those various international fora because there's a lot of overlap, a lot of opportunity. And as Renato also indicated with the Alliance, we'll be working to create new opportunities, but to eliminate or reduce overlap and replication of similar functions. So it takes a lot of work, but we are very much looking forward to engaging in deeper conversations between these international fora so that we can, in the end, have a more impactful result, all of us working together rather than working in different silos. So from my point of view, I see this, I'm offering an open invitation that we want to work with you, with India, with the European Union, and of course with Brazil, and countries around the world to try to make bioenergy in its many various different forms successful. Thank you.
Fantastic, Jim. On your points about collaboration, just wanted to let you know that on February 9th, Clean Edge Asia, which is a program of the US government, has invited me to speak about the energy programs and looking at, EU and global collaboration. So it already shows that our countries are collaborating, working with each other. And I think they really wanted to know about how are we building these cross-border partnerships and the opportunity to share at your forum and you and ours. I think it's already working. And also Mr. Ramakrishna had, I think it's like one small world because he mentioned about LanzaJet to us a few weeks ago and we invited them to the program as well. So I think it's collaboration in motion. Thank you so much for your inputs on this. Now, very quickly, as we talk about national government programs, we also have the Karnataka State Bioenergy Board here that's actively working within the state government, creating biofuel parks where farmers can, work together with oil producers to, look at scalable models for biofuel production. So Patrick Rehan, who's also here, and myself had the chance to meet one such biofuel park last November. And we really visibly saw a great interest in the farmers to have and find the infrastructure to supply the feedstock, their agri waste, and who's there to aggregate it, how do we get the oil companies forward there? So this is a very important part of the dialogue. The Karnataka government has been at the forefront, but again, we need to connect the dots. That's why we are here today. So Mr. Dayanand, over to you to talk about the state's bioenergy program.
Good afternoon, and thanks to European to give an opportunity to showcase our activity. The Karnataka State Bioenergy Development Board has taken initiative since 2008 in forming the policies. We are the first state given the policy to the country on biofuels. Actually, the program is based on community participation. The farmers is the route where the biofuels we are getting, and the feedstock is available from the grassroots level, that is from the participation of the community-driven program. This is in the country. And also since last 8-10 years, we are working on the grassroots level by establishing bioenergy parks and information dissemination centers and other forest-related program with the forest department. In this connection, whatever the envisages and what is the ambitious we have done in the last 8-10 years, now it has come to the, actually it is the fruiting level now. And also today, the morning, the Prime Minister has spoken, he is cover entire all the activities what you have done in the last 10 years. And also this is the type, actually everything what we have done in the grassroots level, it has come in the budget. Now this is the time to move forward and we have to take this program. And the thing is actually we have to prove something in the field level now. Everything, whatever the auspicious we have done, the time has come to taken it to the field and you have to act on that. And we have to commercialize and we have to scaling up and we have to the complete entire bioenergy program, especially in biodiesel, ethanol and other drop-in fuels. Further also, the program is given opportunity to work in the municipal solid waste, where the problem is mainly occurred, especially in urbanization of this country. And the problem and government also taken as very serious in this thing. Now the opportunities are open now. The thing is we have to, the fruit is ripen. We have to get the things done. On this occasion, I am inviting and some things to be driven from the driver's seat. That is, somebody has to take the ownership. We are ready to work and we are ready to whatever the facilities on behalf of the government. Government is always ready, especially the state government and the central government. It has come in the budget now. We have to capture the opportunity and you have to move forward and to make this green fund or green economy or bioeconomy, all these things we have to going to get success in this. Thank you. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. And
Thank you. Thank you for your, very succinct remarks on how to move forward and how the state government also wants to play an accelerator role in this particular program. So I'm just going to pause for a few minutes for any interaction. If we have any questions amongst the audience or online, we can take 1 or 2 questions. Any questions or comments before we proceed?
I have a question for the European Union and I guess for India. And that is, I was wondering if you have done joint solicitations where the 2 countries have come together and actually pool funds under a single offering. I know that's sometimes very difficult. So I was just curious to ask if you have done that.
There are mechanisms at European level for pooling funds. We call them variable geometry instruments. So usually when calls and programs are run, they're open. You have a common pot and it's open to all countries to apply and all consortia to apply. But it is possible to design what are called variable geometry instruments where you would have a limited number of countries and they could be European or non-European, and they put money into a common pot and they actually manage this together. But that takes a lot of setting up, but actually it works very well. And some of the examples are CERN, which you have heard about, and much, much smaller scale activities, but it is possible in principle.
Any more questions? Okay, good. I think in the interest of time again, we will proceed to the next plenary session. Really, again, now bringing the business dialogue, maybe a more B2G and a B2G dialogue and a B2B dialogue to the fore. We wanted to bring together some actors who are actually working on the ground, who are playing a role in various, stages of the supply chain for biofuel production. So to kickstart this particular session, I'd like to invite Patrick again, who's our EU expert and also management consultant at CKA from Brussels, who arrived this weekend. And we're working together on this to build this platform together to really share about the biofuel ecosystem and learnings from Europe. And I think the idea is to set the tone, what's happening in Europe, how are they doing stuff? So what are the lessons for India? And then we will then follow it up with comments from Mr. Ramakrishna on, the working group on biofuels and the India story. So Patrick, over to you.
Thanks, Lena. Since time is short, I have 2 points that I want to make. Recently, I was involved in setting up a project involving European and Indian partners. And the project is to be financed under the Horizon Europe program. And one of the things that came to light when we were doing this was we had to think about the differences between the way financing is organized in Europe and the way it's organized in India. And here on my slide, I make the point that, over the years, we've developed a method of financing in Europe where all kinds of organizations can be funded under a single source of finance. And nowadays, these include research institutes, private companies, but also agencies and local administrative units, public administration. When we work with consortia that involve other countries where finance has to come from other countries, the situation is often more complex. The funding is quite fragmented in the sense that different partners need to be funded by different agencies, and some partners that we might be used to working with might not be funded at all. So working together on joint programs, there's a need for coordination at least on 2 levels. And so one is to work together on themes so that there's a mutual interest in the area being funded. And the other is to work together on the mechanisms for the financing to optimize it, to make things as smooth as possible. So this is the challenge. And I think the only way to address this is for the funders to meet more regularly and talk about the practicalities. It's as simple as that. And actually, solutions can easily be found. They have been found in the past, and I think it would be worthwhile having a regularly scheduled meetings between European funders and Indian funders to sort out those problems and optimize the impact for all. Now, my second slide. Can I have my second slide, please? Thanks. The big focus of the work that we're doing, say between the EU and India right now, is on refinery technologies. Now, this is very important, and research on next generation, third and fourth generation biotechnologies for biofuels is very important and must be done. But a lot of those projects are going to yield fruit in 10 or 20 years' time. And there's a lot that needs to be done immediately to really get the system up and running. And this is something that we've learned looking at the energy transition in Europe. And what we found is that there's a need in particular to work with the public sector because they have research needs, they have difficult problems to solve. And the research programs can be adapted to addressing those needs. And this is what's needed to really unlock the potential of biomass in biofuel production. So, for example, in Europe, most of the cities and municipalities in Europe have signed an agreement or made a pledge that they want to be net zero by a certain date, but they have to plan and find the money and implement the projects to make that happen. So as a result of that, cities and municipalities are very active in research, and also rural regions. The local administrative units are very active in research projects because it's through those projects that they find solutions to the problems that the public sector faces. And so I mentioned just a couple of examples here. One project that was financed by Horizon H2020 is called Decarb City Pipes. And big cities like Berlin, Amsterdam, Vienna work on the problem of how do we decarbonize city heating at the city level. Vienna relies a lot on natural gas, and you might think that you just need to replace natural gas with renewable natural gas, but actually there isn't enough. So you actually have to go around district by district and make a plan as to how you're going to decarbonize city heating on a district by district basis. So there's a lot to learn, or to be learned by the cities in terms of planning and the organization, and in terms of the technical skills required to do this, and how to commission work from the private sector. But this is an example of one project which is dominated by city administrations, where we're learning how to solve those problems because if we don't solve those problems, we will not reach our targets in 2050. Another example is Prospect Plus, and this deals with the reality that cities and regions increasingly have to find new sources of income or new sources of finance to finance their energy and climate projects. But this means that those who work in city administration, they need training and skills and access to technical assistance. And Prospect Plus is an example of one project that was financed by Horizon H2020, dealing exactly with this. The main actors are the cities. We're looking at the problems of how cities finance themselves, and the output is a whole range of training programs aimed at people working in city administration to provide them with the skills they need to succeed. And the last example I mentioned is something called the Propel project, which is a follow-on from the Launch project, again funded by Horizon 2020. And this has led to the establishment of an association called SEFA, the Sustainable Energy Finance Association. And what we found is that it's relatively easy for banks to finance big projects, like 200 million euros, €500 million. You can find the money for that. But the transition relies on very large numbers of very small projects. And they're all rather technical and fiddly with very high transaction costs. So what we've been doing over the last decade is financing research projects where the main actors are the banks, and they're developing innovative financial products that are able to finance the type of large numbers of small projects that need to be done if we're to reach our target in 2050. So the challenge is that right now we're focusing a lot on refineries, and this is important. We have to continue that. But if we're to reach our targets in 2050, we have to look at other problems beyond generating new technologies. And in particular in the area of finance and the capabilities of cities and how planning happens on a very large scale, say in a city of 10 million people, these require a research approach, and the results need to be disseminated not to scientists, but to people working in cities, people working in banks. And this is quite a different approach from the traditional approach to biofuel research. So what I'm suggesting is that to make further progress on EU-India cooperation, that we take some time out and have a look at these projects and see where the interest lies in EU and India working together on solving those other problems in addition to the biofuel refinery and technology problems. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, so for those comments, and we'll invite now Mr. Ramakrishna to talk about how the Indian side of the story. Yeah.
Thank you very much for having invited me and giving me an opportunity to participate and share some of my views. I'm going to be focusing more on the feedstock supply chain. You know, as we all know that when we are talking about the success or sustainability of the bioenergy program, the feedstock supply chain would become very important and critical. So what I'm going to do is how India is looking at organizing the feedstock supply chain. As we all know that you know, the ethanol has been quite a successful story in India. You know, when we started the journey in 2014, we were at something like 1.4% blending on a pan-India basis, as rightly pointed out by Renato. We are already launched the E20, and by 2025, we are really looking at a pan-India E20 program and looking beyond that. Now, this has been possible because of some of the steps that India has taken with regard to ensuring the feedstock that is really required. In the 2018 policy, we ensured that we allowed not just the C molasses, but the B molasses, and also allowed the sugarcane juice and sugar syrup to be used for production of ethanol. And now with the kind of steps that have been taken in the sugar industry, we believe that without sacrificing the sugar production in the country, after having met the Indian requirement of the sugar demand, we would still be able to produce about 7 to 8 billion liters of ethanol from the sugar industry alone. And then the other thing that we did was opening up the feedstock on as far as the surplus food grains are concerned. You know, we had enough food grains that we have been generating, and quite a bit of food grain which is surplus. And also year after year, we have been declaring quite a bit of food grains as unfit for human consumption. So instead of getting into that kind of a situation, we decided that a whole lot of such food grains, surplus food grains and food grains unfit for human consumption could be diverted for ethanol. And the kind of support structures that have been established in the last few years, and the kind of policy enablers that have been put in place, we believe that we will be able to produce another 7.5 to 8 billion liters of ethanol from the food grains alone. So by 2025, we are looking at a kind of an ecosystem where we are really looking at 16 to 17 billion liters of ethanol coming from the sugar route and the grain route. And that is more than sufficient enough for our 20% blending. And as I said, looking beyond 20%, we are also looking at E100. And pretty soon, we have in 1 or 2 places, we have already started selling E100. But by 23, 24, we are looking at a sizable population of flexi engines, flexi cars being introduced in the Indian market. At that point of time, we will have enough ethanol to even address the demand for E100. And looking beyond E100, We are also looking at ethanol for our sustainable aviation fuel program. And also, probably India is the only country which is really looking at seriously blending ethanol and diesel too. So we have done quite a bit of groundwork, homework on that. And I believe that by end of this year, we would be starting a pilot somewhere in India. Now, moving forward to second generation ethanol, India being a agrarian society, I said we are already surplus when it comes to food grains. So we also generate humongous quantities of agri residues. From major 10 to 11 crops, we realize that we produce more than 1 billion tons of agri residues. And even after having considered various usage for that, we have nearly 200 million metric tons of agri residues which are being burned on the farmer's field. So we are really looking at how we can really aggregate that and make it available for our second generation program, ethanol, and also for the compressed biogas program. The challenges that we have when it comes to agri residues is that the availability is highly seasonal, but then we don't have a mechanism in place to aggregate all this, densify it, store it scientifically, and maintain the quality and supply it in the form and factor it is really required by the processing industry all through the year. And I believe that, while we have substantial quantities of the feedstock that is available, we need to put this kind of supply chain. There are a lot of issues and challenges in trying to put this kind of a supply chain in place. And I'm pretty sure that we have other participants who are going to be talking about it, in the panel discussion. So this is one area I believe that there is plenty of scope for us to cooperate with India and European Union in terms of looking at how the agri residues is being aggregated in Europe, the kind of best practices that they have, and how we can probably exchange such kind of information for ensuring that we can put a good program together in this country. Again, coming back to biodiesel and sustainable aviation fuel. Sustainable aviation fuel, as I said, can be produced from ethanol, but we can also produce it from different types of oil seed. We have the homegrown technology of converting any kind of oil into sustainable aviation fuel. And we also have a biodiesel program, and we have a target to do about 5% blending by 2030. However, the biggest challenge is the availability of the feedstock. Most of the program is being run with the imported feedstock such as palm stearin, and I don't think the program can really be sustainable. While we are looking at some low-hanging fruit such as the used cooking oil, as well as the animal fat and things like that, I think that can only probably make 1 to 2% of our blending requirement. Going beyond that, we have to really look in terms of how do we engage the community to grow short gestation oilseed crops as well as tree-based oilseed crops in this country. And that is one area where there is a huge opportunity. States like Karnataka and Chhattisgarh has really shown how this can be actually implemented involving the farming community. Now, it was like the plane went all the way up to the runway, but it is not taken off yet. So now I think it's time that it takes off. And for that to happen, this kind of international cooperation, whether it is US or Europe, becomes very important. So this is something that we really need to look into. And with regard to the carbon capture and utilization, Jim did mention about LanzaTech. We have that technology, not only capturing the tail end gases from refineries and from our steel mills. The first plant is under commissioning right now, which is going to be, I understand that even the ethanol has started coming out from this particular plant. And I think it will become fully operational in the next 2 to 3 months' time. And there are multiple such projects which have been thought of. And also a whole lot of different types of feedstocks, which are not ideally suited for our second generation ethanol or for the CBG program, can go through the gasification process. And once you have the syngas, it can be combined through the gas fermentation technology of LanzaTech. And, you can produce ethanol. And going beyond ethanol, we are also looking at ethylene and various other biochemicals and biomaterials that can be produced. So as far as the feedstock is concerned, I think we have enough feedstock in the country. Again, talking about animal dung. Say, for example, we have something like more than 1 billion metric tons of animal dung, which can be easily aggregated. I'm not even talking about the animal dung, which cannot be aggregated. So again, municipal solid waste. When we talk about municipal solid waste, we are talking about another 500 to 600 million metric tons year after year. So in the earlier presentation, Sangeeta ji talked about 450 million metric tons of carbon is really required to meet our energy requirement. And from these kind of wasted resources, we have more than 600 to 700 million metric tons of carbon, in terms of, if you really look at the molecular level, that is what is available. So what is important here is, how do we really access all these kind of agri residues and other resources that we have, and mapping the right kind of technologies onto these resources, so that not only the country, the whole world and the humanity really gets benefited. So the various objectives of the bioenergy program has been very well articulated by everybody, and the important aspect here is the involvement of the communities in the entire biofuel value chain becomes very important and critical. And that's where I think we have to really think in terms of how we can cooperate together. Two specific things that I would like to suggest to European Union. When it comes to agri-residue aggregation, most of the machinery and the equipment are being imported from European Union. So can we even think in terms of a mechanism by which the aggregators and the farmer producer organizations are adequately supported financially also for them to procure this kind of equipment, and also creating some kind of a the machinery bank in the country, and creating certain infrastructure for storage of the agricultural residues and other feedstocks that we are talking about. And then you also have byproducts. So for example, when you're talking about compressed biogas, it generates humongous quantities of biodigestate. And this is something that has to go back to the soil. And if you're trying to create this kind of infrastructure in the villages for aggregation of the agri residues, we can also think in terms of the same infrastructure for distribution of this biomanure or the biodigestate, which can go back to the soil. And this can also be done through involving the communities in the country. I think this is the area where we need to apply our mind and see how we can work together and cooperate together to see that all the kind of targets that we have, we will be able to meet. And I am pretty sure that India in the coming years will be able to not only meet its own requirement, but substantially will be able to export bioenergy out of this country. Thank you.
No, thank you. You have made so many points in such a short span of time, but point well taken. And that's also an observation that we've had. If we organize, the feedstock aggregation and its, utilization to scale the production of biofuels in a more systematic manner, make people aware, really build a high visibility program for the farmers as well as the adopters of biofuels. I think that reality, cannot be so far. And that's an important, I think, takeaway from the exercise in November and also this meeting today. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ramakrishna. So over now to the, to the people who are working on the ground on feedstock, aggregation. And I'd like to invite Professor Balakrishna Gowda and Professor Raghu, to say, to speak about exactly what Mr. Ramakrishna said, and also the meeting we had at the biofuel park where we met with the farmers, and they are like, they'd be so happy to have the opportunity to sell their, agri waste, for this particular purpose. And they were asking who's going to buy it, who will set up a plant. We need that kind of, business income stream, which can really help them have a better livelihood. So Mr. Balakrishna, over to you to talk about the great work you all are doing and your challenges and needs that you have.
Thank you, Lina. Good evening and it's a pleasure to be back here and speak about the activities that Karnataka has taken up, especially for meeting the feedstock supply chain. In the presentation made by Patrick, he did mention about the climate change and the rural pact and also the long-term vision for the rural areas. So that's what we are up to, and continuation with what we had the discussion in the previous meetings. So we have already gone to the grassroots level, especially the grassroots level administration, where we have something around 5,700 grassroots level administration in the state of Karnataka. And we have covered nearly about 12%. We have sensitized, and out of them, in the next financial year, from April to September, we are going to have something like 4% of the grassroots level administration taking up to the next level of the feedstock aggregation and marketing system. So that is what we are looking at. And Karnataka has got already, we have 3 streams. One is the tree-borne oil seeds, and then the agri-biomass, which is not being used for any other purposes and which is available as surplus. We have something around 14 million tons, which is available, which is estimated only based on about 12 crops. So we have many other crops, but 12 major crops have been considered here, of which we have nearly 14 million tons, which is available. And further to that, we also have the urban solid waste. And the major city of Bengaluru itself has got something like 5,600 tons per day. And the whole of Karnataka, we have something around 12,000 tons per day urban solid waste availability. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to establish the grassroots level collection and processing, where as we have established something like the farmer producers organization in every taluka of Karnataka, and those are the one agencies which are going to help us in aggregating the tree-borne oil seeds as well as the agri biomass. In agri biomass, what we have done is we have, as I said, that we have already trained or the sensitizing of the community at the grassroots administration. Maybe something like the grassroots level speaks of about 3 to 5 villages cluster. So that has been sensitized, and who are going to make go to the next step in the coming financial year from April onwards up to September as a model or the demonstration. So that would help us in getting an insight into how the feedstock is getting aggregated, all sorts of feedstock. Like Ramakrishna mentioned that we have a system of the storage facility in a small way, but we need to have a bigger storage facility that is very essential for the feedstock, so that there's going to be a linkage with the industry. And most important, what we are, the driving force in Karnataka is the decentralized processing or semi-processing, and then getting the value-added products to the biorefineries. So these are the things what we have done and which are in pipeline. And I'm sure that the next financial is going to be there for major shift in our, or major achievement in our work, especially what we have done over the past 10 years is going to give us some fruits in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Balakrishna. And I think you're absolutely right. This is an opportunity, but it needs to be organized and facilitated. So, Mr. Munish Mahuja, you have been doing this, in many states across India. Very impressive profile. You also know the opportunities and challenges. So, look forward to your points of view.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to present my views. So, supply chain management, as alluded by a few speakers, continues to remain the single biggest problem for sustainable biofuels to grow. And that's not only in India, but that's globally as well. And, a dichotomy which I would like to highlight, when we acknowledge this as the known problem, the first capital flow should be to address this as a problem. Whereas all that we have been seeing till now, or we continue to see, is all capital flow towards the technology side. And, we should learn from history. And history has continued to teach us that all biofuel projects have one single cause of failure: sustainable feedstock not being available. So let's look at finding solutions around bringing sustainability of feedstock first to the fore, and then put the capital around assets that we are going to create. Ultimately, any banking institution, financial support, unless the IRR returns start coming, the growth that we want for the biofuel industry will continue to elude us. Fantastic schemes, Government of India, Brazil, European Union, US, but we have large project examples which the world has been looking at. And after 4, 5, 6 years, you hear those assets and companies have been sold for sustainable feedstock supply chain not being there. So how do you address that? One of the biggest challenges which we continue to see is the banking and financial sector not supporting supply chain management as an independent business activity. And if it were to come forward, you do not have long-term take or pay kind of contracts needed for this supply chain management to be sustainable. Because ultimately, biomass aggregators, farmers, village level entrepreneurs, cooperatives are going to aggregate for a project, or let's say a couple of projects in a decentralized format. And if for some reason the project fails, the ecosystem fails. So how do we channelize formal capital for supply chain management is one statement which we need to address. The second part is the technology risks on the projects itself. And again, fantastic work done by Government of India. The oil marketing companies are setting up these large biorefineries, compressed biogas, RNG projects. The schemes are enabling. Price points are today competitive to global levels. And hence the ecosystem is there. And hence I think we are in this platform talking about what we need to do more. States also need to step up. Karnataka spoke about something. UP has developed a very progressive biofuel policy, but other states also need to develop around feedstocks which are available in those states. So specifically with what's available in a state, you will need to develop your biofuel policy around that as a feedstock. But every feedstock is going to give you a different yield. And hence, your project needs to be based and designed upon certain type of feedstocks. North India, we continue to grapple with the burning of straw. But if you look at Karnataka, if you look at South India, Telangana, you're not going to get straw because straw is a fodder here. So what are the other feedstocks? Now, in terms of innovative financing, and we continue to face this challenge, in some ways, in Pressfill, my company, we have been able to address this. And we've been able to address this with support, not from India uniquely, but from external DFIs, financial institutions coming forward with credit guarantee support, which has enabled banks in India, onshore banks, to lend. So what's the gap? The risk-taking ability of onshore banks is still missing. And to bridge that, they are willing to fund in this space because this is a sector which is growing. It's a new sector. The banks also need to learn with some kind of a credit guarantee facility. So what we do in our supply chain management and densification of biomass into briquettes and pellets, uniquely, we have secured a $10 million credit facility from USDFC. So USDFC has come forward, a $10 million credit facility, which is kind of put in India for the first time working capital availability for biomass supply chain. And it's unique. Working capital from financial institutions is typically available on a 2 to 3 month cycle. And now with biomass, farm agri residue, you're talking about larger duration cycles, 6 to 8 months. You need to aggregate post the harvest, store it for usage for 12 months. So where are you going to get working capital from banks for this larger period of or longer durations of time? And that's where a credit guarantee support has worked. Similarly, if you look at asset side, and these are technology assets. So what we do is we establish boilers for industrial steam as a product. So biomass to renewable energy for industrial steam. And here World Bank and SIDBI PRSF has come with a 75% credit guarantee, enabling banks to fund and at reasonable rates. Because banks also want to mitigate their risk. So specifically to the topic where economic models, financial innovation, the last but not the least, India is developing the carbon market. We are saying we are going to have a carbon pricing for business models coming up. And hence, we should be able to price carbon for different aspects of energy differently. We did develop a market where we had a solar, a buying situation where discoms had to buy some part of renewable energy, and you had renewable energy certificates for solar and everything else in one bucket. I think the time has come where now we need to have carbon credits based on biomass and biofuels, maybe because you're mitigating certain climate challenges to have a higher pricing. You need to have renewable energy certificates specific to biofuels, enabling the marketing companies, enabling the end users to be guided to use this. I think in the present budget, the 5% mix of renewable natural gas or CBG across all PNG, CNG platforms, all the oil marketing companies have to source 5% from the CBG space is a very forward-looking move. And I think this should go to a 10% to a 20% in the future. So I'll pause here. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Munish, completely very, very valuable comments and inputs, from your side. I'm sure, I'd like to have a more 1 hour or 2 hour discussion just on this, because as you rightly said, we need to fix this, side of the issue. And it not only helps the biofuel industry and the world, but also the farmers who are increasingly struggling from, reduced income sources. So I think this I think we need to have a more in-depth discussion. Yeah.
So there's an innovative model we developed. It was kind of tutored to us by State Bank of India. However, for whatever reason, State Bank of India could not operationalize it. State Bank of India wanted to operationalize it for a period of 90 days only. So what we have done is a tripartite arrangement between farmers, financial institution, and now HDFC Bank has done it, a private sector bank, and my company Prespel, where we are co-signatories, where the farmers aggregate, deliver the material, the feedstock to Prespel, and HDFC Bank through farm financing limits pays the farmer immediately. So the key point is the farmer gets paid within 48 to 72 hours through a financial inclusion banking channel. And now Prespel gets 180 days to utilize this farm agri residue, convert it to a form of energy, and thereby you have a repayment cycle where we repay back the bank. Now, in this innovative financial structure, and this works in the sugarcane sector with sugar mills, we have put that into place for biofuels, for farm agri residue, and this 180-day window is still short. Actually, it should be 270 days, but it's something which has started. And I think more and more financial institutions can now learn from this and take it ahead.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And, now listening to, the Indian perspective, very interestingly, I want to move to the European perspective, inviting Mr. Ewald Marco Munza, President of the European Waste-Based and Advanced Biofuels Association, EWABA. Over to you, Ewald. We're waiting to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ewald Marco Münzer, and I'm President of the European Waste-Based and Advanced Biofuel Association, EWABA. It's a great honor for me to have the possibility to deliver a short keynote to you at today's conference. First of all, with the already mentioned European focus, I want to state clearly that we welcome all the regulatory acts which were presented by the European Commission today, but also kindly asked to take care when it comes to the question of the competition for the waste-based raw materials. Because at the end of the day, we need a stable and consistent regulatory framework, and therefore we ask not to dedicate single feedstocks to single technologies or sector, neither in Europe nor in India. But in general, waste-based biodiesel industry has always endeavored to recycle inferior waste and residues in an economically and ecologically efficient way. The energetic use of these residues is a prime example of a circular economy. Why? Exactly because not only brings the ecological added value of relieving the burden on the environment by keeping raw materials alive longer. Above all, however, it brings additional economic benefits in two respects. The targeted collection of UCO not only helps to relieve the sewage system and wastewater management by avoiding damage. Properly collected UCO is currently the highest quality waste-based raw material for biofuel production, and here most efficiently and sustainably used in the biodiesel production. Industry, especially the companies that I represent as a president of EVABA, have set up systems that collect used cooking oil from food factories, restaurants, hotels, households, and public collection points, among others. The collected waste oils are used to produce biodiesel through trans-esterification, a best practice and efficient process that maximizes the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions on the road and at the maritime sector. For example, in 2021, the EVABA members produced more than 2 million of tons of waste-based, advanced, but above all sustainable biodiesel, saving more than 6 million tons of CO2 emissions in Europe. Today, however, we are confronted with key changes in European biofuel policy. This will also have an impact on global supply chains. The question will be, do we want to actively interfere in the material flows in order to divert raw materials, or do we leave it to the market? My answer here is clear. If you let them, raw materials will always find the most efficient and economically and ecologically most sensible way. If, as is currently being discussed in the EU, we artificially distort the level playing field, then the raw materials will not be used in an ecologically sensible way. Above all, it will take maybe also a wrong turn economically. Let's look at the targeted 2% SAF mandate in 2025. We are talking about at least 1.5 million tons of UCO here. If we compare this to the current total demand of 2.5 million tons per year by the European biodiesel sector, the imbalance can already be seen with the naked eye. And in times when the achievement of climate goals is still a long way off. But even the Commission itself predicts that around 80 up to 90% of all vehicles in Europe will still have an internal combustion engine in 2030. Our opinion is they should rather be operated by road with higher blends. Then we would have a double benefit regarding also the transport sector. So what I advise politicals today, I would say that we will need all available technologies to achieve our climate goals, no matter how ambitious they may be. We will also need all available raw materials for this, and we will also have to find other raw materials to make them usable. Above all, however, we will have to find a consensus about what we want and what will be possible. I'm looking here primarily at the role of biofuels beyond the road, and especially at the maritime sector. So if we want global shipping to really make its contribution to decarbonization, then we will have to make the amount available to this sector that it needs. However, this must also remain affordable, as is shown by the current catastrophic price development along the international supply chain. So we will all have to ask ourselves together how we can also fill the ships on the international trade routes with biofuels, biodiesel, or some other alternatives. Finally, my appeal is therefore, let the industry do its work. Let's create a level playing field. The feedstock find its own way. Do not divert it artificially. The companies that I represent here already make a huge contribution to climate and environmental protection. They create great jobs, help keep our rivers and seas fat-free, and produce sustainable renewable energy from waste-based raw materials for all sectors. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ewald. I think one of the things we'd like to do with you as I listen to you and Monish, as well as the University of Agriculture Sciences, is really, we'd maybe have some written up documents on how this is being done in Europe, and also to see if there is any possibility of best practice exchange as we try to create the whole process of feedstock aggregation. In India as well, there might be some learnings from Europe and other countries that we could benefit from. So we'd, if you don't mind, we'd reach out to you, or if you already have information on how Europe's doing this, there might be papers written, articles, etc. We'd welcome the opportunity to receive this information. But thank you very much for your inputs.
Thank you. You're welcome, and my colleagues are in the room in India, and we take your appeal and we can exchange the information. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ewald. So now we have, two very interesting businesses we'd like to hear from. One is GPS Renewables. They kind of reflect what new generation companies are in India doing today, the emerging entrepreneurs in the biofuel sector. And we'll then follow that up with a European company that's and their experiences in India. So Varun, you couldn't join us physically today. Hope everything is well, at home and better than what it was. We miss you physically, but happy. Thank you so much for still making the time to join us virtually today. So Varun, over to you with, about your comments.
Thank you so much. It's been interesting to listen to everyone so far. I'll just share my 2 cents of learning I have in this from this sector. GPS is a startup. I would like to first thank the government of India and BIRAC. We have Dr. Sangeeta sitting over here. We were incubated by BIRAC. Our company, when we started, there was no Swachh Bharat mission. This was before 2012. Today, we are a company who was churning around $40 million per annum in terms of setting up these large-scale bio-CNG plants. We are the company who set up the largest plant, if I'm not wrong, in Asia for generating bio-CNG from organic waste. We process 550 tons of organic waste to generate 17 to 19 tons of bio-CNG. Overall, my topic today is talking about innovative business models. The way we focus on as a company is we divide the project into 3 aspects. One is feedstock, which Monish sir has spoken very properly about, and a lot of other people have discussed about this in much more detail. The second part is technology and the project itself. Now, in technology, what we have seen so far is Europe has and America, for that matter, has seen a lot of such plants in the past. So we don't believe in reinventing stuff. Wherever we feel that there is an option of bringing in technology from Europe or America, we bring it down. But to add to that, we also have our own 5 patents. Again, thanks to BIRAC for helping us fund doing those innovations and coming to this level. What we've realized is, in terms of business models, this new sector with the policies which were discussed by other members on this panel has opened up new avenues. First of all, what I've realized is, as Monisha spoke about the feedstock aggregation from biomass for agri-waste, there is a massive challenge for feedstock collection when it comes to MSW. This sector is highly unorganized as well, and it is controlled by local municipal corporations, which are very hard to deal with for any larger organization. So GPS found an innovative way or a simple way to tie up with companies who already have an existing contract with the municipal corporations. One unique thing about municipal corporation waste or city waste is once a contract is given out, it's gone for almost 20 to 25 years. Unless the other company defaults, you can't really get, there's no inroads into this sector for that particular city or for that particular waste as such. So what GPS did was we tied up with all the major companies whom we thought were investment worthy enough for us to do a boot model with. Today, we have a pipeline of around $135 million worth of projects, which are coming up in 7 large cities of India. We are working very closely with the to set up one of the largest plants in the world again to generate around 100 tons of bio-CNG at one single location from more than 3,000 tons of MSW. This is happening in the city of Hyderabad, and we hope to start the project at the end of in the end of April in the coming year. Now, so apart from this, what we've also realized is that there is also a challenge in terms of offtake. Even though the government has given some sort of a surety of offtake of biogas, but it is not a guarantee. And the bankers see this two words very distinctly. So an assurance, even though sounds very good on paper, a guarantee is something which the bankers require. The way we were able to mitigate this entire risk, and as Monish correctly said again, I'm referring to Monish a lot because he's been a guiding force for me in this sector for a very long time. What we've seen is the bankers do not take this assurance as a guarantee, and it's very difficult to raise money from banks for this sector. So GPS as a company, then we found out different ways to get in people who would be giving us a take or pay kind of an arrangement. So we started talking to industries, started talking to large consumer bulk buyers of gas. Given this entire scenario, we believe that this entire sector is heating up right now. We believe the floodgates for the bioenergy sector have opened up just now, and a lot of entrepreneurs like me would be entering this phase and this entire sector. And we see a huge growth potential in this country. What we still lack is access to a lot of green capital in the country and proper banking channels and debt channels. The bankers are still figuring out a way how to evaluate projects. They're still understanding the terminology of a bioenergy project. The fertilizer market is still evolving. I'm sure Ashish will speak about the fertilizer sector after me. And we hope together as a forum over here are able to grow this sector in a much better way. Thank you so much.
Varun, thank you again for your succinct comments, in this area. And as an Indian startup, I can only imagine the journey you've had. And but now the prospects are looking absolutely really good with our country as well as countries around the world coming together. So wish you all the best. And with that, I just want to invite Mr. Ashish Kumar, the MD of Verbio, to share his views of a European company in India.
Thank you very much. You know, it is so cozy over here and plus so noisy. So what I did is I collected a couple of pictures and I'll let the pictures do the talking so that you can at least don't have to go through the pain of trying to listen to me. So I've just collected, as I said, a couple of pictures which will reflect what we have done and what we are going through. I hope it works. In the meantime, I'll just probably give you a quick intro. Verbio has, it's a German biofuel producer, and we have just commissioned Asia's largest agri-residue-based bio-CNG unit. This was done last year in the month of October. The plant is currently functional, and we are roughly producing about 10 tons of CBG. So that's already happening. This is for the first time an automotive grade fuel has been made from stubble. The objective of this project was to demonstrate that, yes, there is a technology which can do this, conversion. And we are currently, with the recent numbers, we are talking about yields of close to about 14, 15% what we are able to achieve, which I think is pretty decent. I guess we are struggling with the slides, right? Okay, so maybe then I can just, I'm sorry for that, but works. Okay, so just to share a couple of numbers over here, I'll share 3 numbers. The plant's capacity is 33 tons of bio-CNG production per day. That's the capacity. For this production, we need about 120,000 tons of agri-residue, the feedstock per year. And the third number to remember over here is when we are on full capacity, we'll be generating about 700 tons of fermented organic manure per day. Now, this would make it the largest capacity in all the 3 respects at a single source. There are a couple of points which I'll just like to reflect, especially keeping agri-residue in the background. And the second thing is being medium to large size kind of production capacities. There are a few challenges which are fundamental to this business case. The first and foremost, what we talk about here today is the grid connectivity. Grid connectivity, I'm referring to the pipeline grid connectivity, because when you're setting up agri-residue based units, mostly you will be in rural remote locations and not having proximity to any demand or consumption centers. So despite of technology, despite of feedstock availability, if you do not have sufficient CBG offtake, it doesn't work. So from our experience, though we have and yes, I must also mention that we are a fully integrated company, which means we do the complete aggregation on our own. We do the production, we have the technology, our own patented technology, and plus we also do the end logistics of the CPG as well as FOM to the end user. So we are not having any third party involved in it. It's a fully integrated setup. Coming back to the point of grid connectivity, so when you're setting up these kind of capacities, without having grid connectivity, it's really a tough one, because to ramp up capacities without having CBG offtake, that is not possible. Because normally everybody starts with the challenge of feedstock. To a large extent, we have kind of tamed that. We are doing that aggregation on our own. We have invested in the machinery. We have our own machinery, our own labor. So we are doing the collection on our own, right? It works. And that is what I would suggest, advise to anybody who's trying or planning to set up at least a medium to large scale unit, to have some control on the supply chain and not be completely reliant 100% on an external source. That's my advice. That's one point related. We said about the grid connectivity, then we talked about the feedstock part of it, but the feedstock part also needs to be handled well at the government, at the central and the state government level, in terms of having right policies to encourage XC2 management. We do not have that as of now, and this needs to be pushed. The third topic I would like to mention over here is the FOM. As Varun rightly pointed, that is my favorite topic at the moment, and I have all my attention to it. That is, how do we adapt the existing fertilizer control order so that the FOM getting generated from any CBG unit, irrespective of the feedstock type, is accepted. And it is accepted in an as-is form without doing any kind of value addition. So this needs to go back to the farmers, or in our case, go back to the farmers and complete the carbon cycle. That's the way it should be done. So that's what we are working on at the moment. One more point I would like to make here is that the local demand is very limited. We talked about grid connectivity, but also in the catchment areas, at least, we should have policies from the state side which encourage local demand, whether it is in terms of converting the local state, road transportation into
convert them into CBG the way Delhi did for CNG. So we need such kind of innovative, measures which incentivizes or creates local demand in that catchment area. So, and yes, last but not least, despite of reduction in stubble burning, despite fuel substitution by CBG, but still there is no benefit to the producer in terms of the CO2 emission reduction. This has already been said. So we are creating a very positive environmental impact or a impact on the healthcare of the communities around us, but there is no monetization of this. So this is where the CBG producer would struggle, because CBG as a business case will rely on 3 or 4 revenue streams. One is the gas, the FOM, then we are talking about the carbon credits, and yes, we also end up having a lot of CO2. Out of these 4, the first 2 are the most important for us to get in place is the gas, which is already functioning, and now we have to get the FOM right. And then I think the next 2 should be the next priority. So that'll be all from my side. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Ashish. Time is so short. I'm sure we'd like to hear a longer story from you as well. Yeah, just a moment. Yeah, absolutely. We have a few minutes for Q&A. So we are looking forward to questions. Yes.
Thank you. And actually, I have a question for Patrick, who made a very profound statement, that we need a lot of small businesses, large number of small businesses to make a difference. Actually, this perfectly fits the Indian scenario, considering our agricultural patterns. So what can we do together to make it happen? I just want to know.
Thank you. We have a situation in Europe called the renovation wave, because 97% of our buildings in Europe are energy inefficient and they need to be upgraded. We have to triple the amount of building retrofits and upgrades every year from now until 2050 to achieve that. So it should be a huge boom for the building industry, but it's not. And the reason is because the projects are technical. The projects rely on making energy savings. So this is a more complex financial deal than the traditional, upgrade. And banks are not able to finance this because the transaction costs are too high. So about 5 years ago, the threshold for an energy project that a bank would finance was somewhere between 5 and 10 million euros. And nowadays, we brought the threshold down to around 100,000 euros. Because we've developed, some banks have developed new products that are adapted to this specific problem. The technically complex energy upgrades of the buildings. And so what they have done is they've developed standardized contracts. They've developed standardized risk management protocols and standardized negotiation procedures that bring down the transaction costs much, much lower than they were before. And the vision is that one day it should be as easy to get an energy upgrade of a building as it is to get a normal house mortgage today. Because every house is different, every architect is different, everybody's house is special, but yet the process for funding mortgages is standardized and automated essentially. So this is what we're trying to do in the energy sector. And the banks, some banks, the innovative banks are stepping up and they're having great success developing new financial products for this. So what I think needs to be done, and I learned a lot from speaking to Professor Gowda and his colleagues in the Bangalore fuel park, he was telling me that for some of their energy projects, they need an investment of the order of 50,000 euros. But it's very hard to get that money because banks just aren't used to financing that. And so it's a different problem for the terms of credit. There are many problems in the financial sector. But I think that it's not a question of just needing one project that costs 50,000. You probably need 10,000 projects that cost 50,000. And at that stage, you're talking about a need not for 50,000 euros, but for $500 million. And at that point, it becomes very interesting for a financial institution to design a product that can be efficiently delivered. So these are things that we've started doing in Europe, and we've financed research projects involving banks specifically to develop those efficient tools, standardized risk management protocols, standardized contracts, standardized negotiation processes to make everything very efficient. And so I think that there is scope for mutual learning. We have projects and organizations and banks in Europe that have gone down that road, but there are lots of other examples of innovative financial projects. Last year, I made an inventory and I came across 44 innovative financial mechanisms for financing energy and climate projects. Yeah. Biomass aggregation. Yeah, I think it should be possible because it's not just a question of segregation. You also need at local level, you need renewable energy for the transformation. There are other types of projects and investments that are needed. You need to distribute the byproducts. I think Colonel mentioned this, distributing the byproducts. So there are actually lots and lots of small projects that need to be done. They're all entrepreneurial projects that could create prosperity at a local level. But they're not all, it's not like financing high tech with patents, You have hundreds of thousands of projects that are more or less the same. And I think under those circumstances, it should be possible to develop, working with banks, the financial products that will actually solve that problem. We've started to do it in Europe with help from Horizon 2020.
Any more questions, comments? Then I'm just going to hand over to Pierrick.
Hi. Okay. Thank you very much for all the colleagues around the table here. Yes. It's very challenging. Huh? So thank you very much. We will follow up. We will have all the slides available, but more important, what I want as a director and head at the EU Embassy is that we together build projects because we have a capacity in financing. We will do it with DBT. We will do it with other stakeholders. So we are waiting for your proposals, for your ideas. And we have colleagues like Patrick and Lena who can help in that process of making proposals. It's not easy to make a proposal to a funding program. Especially it's not easy because it will be my office, DBT and other stakeholders. So we have constraints on both sides, but it has to go with industry. This is startup, large companies, small companies. And two last thing. So tomorrow you are well aware, we have a dedicated meeting on the safety staff at the airport. You are all welcome. And tonight we have this reception, you have it. So we hope to see you there at the District 6. And right now we are going to take a group picture. And to thank you, we have a nice notebook with the EU flag on it. So we will give it to you. I'm very sorry the acoustic was not as I had foreseen. So maybe next time we can have all helmets. It's but to have you here during the exhibition is quite good. So thanks for all. We were at the same time listening and speaking. So I feel this good momento. Thank you very much. We see downstairs for the group picture. Thanks to all of you. And thank you for the colleagues online. We are going to have a drink tonight. Please join.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. Have a nice reception.